Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next webinar in our OT for IT webinar series. My name is Michelle Rosinski, and I'll be your host today. On today's webinar, we'll be talking about enabling enterprise scale in industrial environments. Whether you're modernizing legacy systems, expanding across plants, or trying to align OT and IT more closely, one thing is clear. Enterprise-wide visibility, standardization, and integration are no longer nice to have. They're essential. Joining me for this event are four of our product experts representing different layers of the manufacturing tech stack. We have MES, HMI SCADA, data management, and scheduling software. Here to talk about the unique challenges and opportunities at each layer when scaling operations across sites. We'll dive into specific examples and strategies that IT leaders can take back and use in their organizations. But first, the event today may include forward-looking statements. The information presented is intended to be an outline of general product direction and should not be relied on to make any purchasing decisions. Now for some housekeeping. You should see an interface with some buttons at the bottom of your screen that look like the ones on the right side of the slide here. Please send any questions you have through the orange chat button. Through the purple envelope button, you can contact our team. The blue paperclip button is our most important, as it's where you'll find relevant content and resources related to today's webinar. Through the peach person icon, you can connect with today's speakers. If you need technical assistance, reach out through the yellow question mark button, but most issues can be solved by refreshing your browser. Lastly, please share your feedback. We have the pink checklist button where you can send us your challenges and initiatives. We use this information to build our products collaboratively with your insight, so it's very important. So with that, I'm proud to introduce today's speakers. First, we have Joe Gerstl, Senior Director representing MES Software. Joe, would you like to give a little bit of background about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. Looking forward to today's conversation. I've been doing this for quite some time, been with GE for about 11 years. Prior to that, with Microsoft for a while, and then prior to that, actually at GE. So been with GE a long time, been working with Plant Apps quite some time. So happy to talk to you guys about Proficy Smart Factory and Enterprise scale.
Awesome. Next up, we have Jimmy Felice representing automation software. Jimmy, can you give a little bit of a background?
Sure, yeah, thank you. My name is Jimmy Felice, as you mentioned, and I'm a product manager for automation software and really focused on market development now. I've been working with our HMI SCADA and controls for, over 25 years now in a variety of different industries, from manufacturing, water, power, and pretty much anything where we do automation. So looking forward to a great discussion around enterprise scale.
Nice. All right. Next up, we have Brian Johnson. He's our product manager of data management software. Brian, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Johnson here. I'm the product manager within GE Vernova for Historian, like most of us know, and a new product that we're calling our Proficy Data Hub that I'm sure many folks have heard of. But it's the newest product in the stable of products that we have. And happy to be here today. I've been in the role for about 3 years now. And I think we've seen a lot of change in Historian in that time. So really excited to be here today and looking forward to discussing enterprise scale.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. And finally, we have Jens Bajagard, who is product manager for our scheduling software. Jens, could you tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is Jens. I'm the product manager for the scheduling software. We call it Proficy Scheduler -Robix. And I've been in that role for 20 plus years. So I've been in detailed scheduling, working with that for many years, and have been also working a lot deploying scheduling solutions, including to enterprise scale. So really looking forward to the discussion today.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, guys. So before we get into the interview portion of today's event, I'd like to begin by talking about enterprise scale. When we talk about enterprise scale, we're really talking about a shift in mindset from managing individual plants or systems in isolation to thinking holistically across the entire enterprise. Now, that can mean expanding from site-level systems to enterprise-wide architectures, but it can also be as simple as adding new lines or products to a single site. For IT leaders, that means designing infrastructure that can support growth, whether it's adding new sites or expanding capabilities within a single facility, while accommodating multiple users and meeting demands for data access and standardization, without adding complexity or creating silos. It's not just about size, it's about consistency, control, and coordination. Whether you're expanding to new sites or trying to modernize legacy environments, enterprise scale is about making those changes easier, faster, and more sustainable in the long run. But it's a tall order. So to make enterprise scale more achievable, we focus on 4 key capabilities that support IT leaders in building smarter, more connected systems. First, we have scalability, which is the ability to roll out new lines, facilities, or changes to your tech stack without starting from scratch each time. Next is flexibility. No 2 plants or business units are identical, so your architecture has to adapt to different tools, workflows, and requirements over time. Then there's standardization, which is about creating consistency so you can trust your data, reduce support burdens, and simplify upgrades. And finally, integration, because none of this works if your systems can't talk to each other. Whether it's connecting OT to OT or OT to IT, integration is what brings the whole ecosystem together. So that brings us to our first question for today's event. What are the biggest challenges that IT leaders face with the different product categories when it comes to enabling enterprise scale? So Joe, let's start with you. What are the challenges that IT leaders might face with MES when it comes to enterprise scale?
Yeah, I think some of the things that they would see being challenges is kind of pushing configuration across sites. So you might have one site with a filler or some sort of other bottling line or perhaps a packaging line that you might have at other sites, a very similar line situation. So that can be hard to transfer that information and sort of like a template from one site to another. And enterprise scale offered by Proficy Smart Factory allows you to do that.
Great, thank you. So next, I'll ask Jimmy, can you talk about some of the challenges that IT leaders might face with HMI SCADA when it comes to enterprise scale?
Yeah, I mean, with automation systems, they're typically going to be at the OT layer and obviously providing a lot of the data required for manufacturing and other systems. And one of the challenges is actually maintaining that consistency across the system as well. So things like providing standardized visualization. In many cases with larger organizations, you're also dealing with a variety of different systems from different vendors. Typically there's not just one system on that OT layer. So connectivity can sometimes present challenges in terms of just disparate systems from different vendors.
Yeah.
Another challenge is, just a lot, even just if it is a lot of the same software in some cases or controls, they may have been installed at different times using different versions and things like that. So a lot of those things really become challenges when you're trying to create that consistent experience across the enterprise, or even just getting the data across the enterprise into the various systems. Another challenge is also even just maintaining and managing those systems. You're using different configuration, or you have multiple, or you're duplicating a lot of that configuration if you are using different systems or different versions. So a lot of these are challenges when you are trying to kind of pull everything together and provide that enterprise level view, or even more advanced things like analytics and things like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned data, actually, which is a great segue over to Brian to talk about some of the challenges that IT leaders might face with data management when it comes to enabling enterprise scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Data management, data governance, they really are sort of the modern issues that folks are facing when you're thinking of an enterprise scale interface, right? Whether it's time series data or data from other systems, how does it all play together? How do we make sure that it all makes sense? How do we make sure that we're getting the data that we need to drive the results that we're looking for in our business, right? These are all major questions. And tools like Proficy Historian make it easy from the time series perspective, right? We're able to collect a lot of data very quickly, send it to where it needs to be analyzed, and get the insights from that data that, from the shop floor up to the C-suite. What do we need to know? Different things for different people, but it's all there for you as long as you are able to build out the analytics that you need. Another paradigm that we've seen shift recently is looking at connecting different series of data together, where maybe you have different plants running the same data, but you need to aggregate it, right? That would be a classic definition of enterprise scale, a global enterprise looking to bring their data together so individuals can see it from across the spectrum. But other systems, like Jimmy just talked about, man, there's so many different source systems for data in the modern era. How do you bring it all together and make it make sense? And that's where a tool like Proficy Data Hub will come in handy for folks, where you're able to aggregate data across data layers, across unified namespace, across different pieces of the puzzle to make sure that everything comes together, you understand where it's coming from and what it's telling you. And then you're able to drive a much better insight, right? And this is a problem that will only compound itself in coming years as more and more data comes available, as we're able to leverage tools like AI and to be able to analyze our data in new and different ways, doing pattern recognition, doing things much faster and in a much more simplified way than perhaps we've seen in the past, right? If we're looking at legacy tools like Excel, for example, or otherwise. But we connect to so many different tools within the Proficy portfolio for analytics, whether it's our own operations hub or Trend Miner or Seek or any of the Power BI type tools. We make it very easy to get the data out and to make sure so that you can make sense of it as an informed leader and then make the decisions you need to make to really drive your business forward.
Yeah, data's really big right now, and it presents a lot of issues along the way. So we're definitely very excited about Data Hub. Okay, moving on to Jens to talk about scheduling software and some of the challenges that IT leaders might face related to enterprise scale and scheduling software.
Yeah. So I think most of us knows, and have also already tried how much power and scalability it brings to fully digitize a process into a purpose-built system. And I think we also know it's challenging, but it comes with a big reward. So personally, I know that, it gave a boost when we in development, we moved from semi-manual issue management systems to a dedicated system that handles all the issue management and the process about software development and integrations to all the different systems. We could grow from a few to many developers without taking a hit. And in detailed scheduling, it's similar, because in a company, one of those areas that are typically today still lives in a disconnected Excel sheet is scheduling. So I think what we have seen is that it does become a challenge to put all these personal Excel sheets into a common digital scheduling system that fits the requirements of many different plans when you are in an enterprise environment and many different users. So I think that's the big challenge, really. And will it come with a reward of taking that challenge? Of course it does. The potential value of having online scheduling system that can easily do a quality rescheduling while keeping full integration to ERP and MES. That potential is big. So what I think what we have seen is that this challenge to move existing semi-manual scheduling processes into a new digitized integrated scheduling workflow, while also doing rollouts, while maintaining and getting buy-ins from users. That's a big challenge, and I think it requires all of what all you guys also mentioned about being able to send out configurations and stuff. And also from a scheduling perspective, I think a planner has many touch points within a plant. So purchasing, logistics, sales, and of course also operations, because they live off of the schedule that scheduling produces. So it's also a challenge to map all these touch points out and making sure that you cover all of them. So that's yeah. So it's really the change management and all this is also a big challenge, I see.
Yeah, in manufacturing, it's not if something will go wrong, it's when something will go wrong, and then being able to handle that and change and adapt. And I know that the scheduling software is a big piece of that. So moving on to our next question, how does the Proficy portfolio help solve these challenges? So Joe, going back to you, can you talk about how the Proficy MES helps to solve the challenges that you mentioned?
Yes, sure. So you're able to export the configuration of from one system to another, and we're actually building out some additional tools that is going to make this much easier. So, but you are able to take an existing configuration, export it, including all the event detection, all the variables, all the things that are needed to run the other system, the line, I should say, and it's very straightforward to do that. So you can easily templatize a machine, a line, and bring it forward.
Great, that's awesome. Okay, next moving on to Jimmy to talk about how our Proficy HMI SCADA solutions, iFix and Simplicity, can help solve the challenges that you mentioned with enterprise scale.
Yeah, I think when I think of it from a SCADA perspective, some of the ways that we can really help is by providing some key capabilities around things like centralization, having that model-based design. Brian touched on it a little bit with Data Hub, but having it at the product level as well as at the system level, model-based design really does help with providing some of that consistency. And really just providing scalability and tools that really help with that integration. We talked about the challenge of, connecting all these disparate systems, and that's some of the capabilities we have, whether it's through connectivity or some of the tools we have to really extract data from both current modern devices using some standard communications, but also being able to handle a lot of the legacy equipment that's still going to live in a lot of our manufacturing plants.
From a central management perspective, there's really a couple key areas to consider there. One is around configuration and managing those systems, as well as from an operational perspective, just being able to provide that centralized view. So from a configuration perspective, I talked a little bit about the modeling, being able to have both a centralized model as well as a product level model that we can kind of combine. Some of those capabilities are really helpful. And then we also provide capabilities around managing the system centrally, whether it's the configuration itself, license management. We do have some flexibility in our licensing model now where you can purchase a set of tags and deploy them on different systems across the enterprise, essentially, and being able to modify that as your changes, as things do change sometimes in terms of how you want to architect and manage your system. We also do provide very highly scalable and flexible on the runtime perspective as well. So we can have, and this a lot will depend on, kind of the concepts in terms of, individual manufacturers will have different preferences here, but you can either have multiple smaller systems feeding a central system, and some prefer to have, whether it's a large SCADA per site or, per department, or for the entire enterprise, we can handle all those different types of architectures. So really providing a lot of flexibility in that sense. And then, one of the other things I'll bring up is, as you kind of go through this is, sometimes we think, hey, let's just replace everything, with new, but that's also never practical either. So it's really important to have that integration that we spoke about earlier to, be able to really connect to all those different systems, even if they are from different things. Sometimes it may be better to leave systems in place and just layer on top if that's possible as well. So, those are just some of the capabilities we provide to help with some of those challenges.
Yeah, awesome. It sounds like there's a lot of flexibility there. So that's great. Okay, let's move on to Brian to talk about how Proficy Historian can help solve some of the data management challenges that you talked about in the previous session, and also Data Hub, if you want to talk.
Yeah, so from the historian perspective, we follow along much with what Jimmy was just discussing with the SCADA systems, where interconnectivity amongst products is not a problem, right? We connect with all of the historians that are on the market today to bring data together. So mixed mode systems are not a problem for us, but really from the historian perspective, to reach enterprise scale, number one, we can scale up to 100 million tags, and on cloud, which is a big piece of what I'm going to talk about for enterprise scale, we can go up to 1 billion samples per minute, which is really very cool. That's billion with a B. So on cloud, we have a lot of capability to allow customers and manufacturers to scale as far as they need to within their operation. And one of the beauties of cloud and soon SaaS historian is you're able to leverage all of the throughput of a cloud environment without having to purchase infrastructure physically, set it up, pay for all of the background, all of the folks to make it run, then troubleshoot any problems that happen. So once you're on cloud, it really is, clicking a series of buttons and being able to leverage all of the horsepower of the cloud environment. So Historian's available on AWS, and we have a lot of excellent tools there, and that allows more interconnectivity. And then that really flows into where does Data Hub play in the whole puzzle, right? Data Hub also being based on cloud and on-prem gives you that flexibility to take all of the data that you're able to collect and bring all of your sites together. So you really have that centralized location, and no longer do you have a collection of disparate sites with disparate data. You now have one collection of all the data that you could possibly need to then run your operation, which from centralization perspective, I think makes it a lot easier to then run analytics, to gain insights, to then be able to scale as you need to. So if you're entering new business models, or you're building new lines, or you're adding new facilities, you're really able to do that very quickly and efficiently on cloud. It takes about an hour to spin up a new historian, for example, which is much faster than it takes to go through the install and the setup and deploying all the collectors. And then we also have legacy tools available within Historian, so things like remote collector management. So if you are deploying sites across the globe within Historian, you don't have to have folks on site to run those historians, right? You could do all the administration remotely, which makes it much easier to expand your footprint. So there's a lot of different tools we have available that we can bring within Historian and Data Hub to help folks reach that sort of enterprise scale.
Yeah, it sounds like, especially with the cloud options, that's a really great enabler for enterprise scale.
Absolutely. And then if folks really want to reach the pinnacle of what they can do on cloud, SaaS is the next option where you would want to consider as a customer, because then we're removing the burden of administration from you. We're running all the software on your behalf. You're just getting the benefit of having all the data and being able to collect. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that, Brian. And now we'll move on to Jens to talk about Proficy Scheduler / Robex, and how that can help solve some of the challenges that were mentioned related to enterprise scale.
First of all, I think that the whole architecture of the scheduler is adequate for enterprises, because you have one database for where you can have all the sites in a single database. You can configure users, and you can also build in Active Directory or this kind of authorization, easily giving access to the different sites. So that is one important thing. Then from a configuration side, the system is also very flexible. It's geared towards both that you can have common configurations across different sites, but very often it's also our experience that you need a special configuration for a certain site, and that's also possible to set up individual configurations. So that flexibility is really needed when you go enterprise wide. Master data management. I think it's there are very good tools in Scheduler for managing that, and you can import master data from both files and databases and stuff. So helping with that initial configuration of the system, there are good tools. And shortly, we will also release a new version of Scheduler where all configuration will live in the database. So and that includes also if you need to scustomize really something for a certain site, that's also possible and will stay fully in the database. Then I believe also from a change management perspective, the scheduler is a really visual Gantt type of tool with a lot of graphs and stuff, and it really helps users to easily grasp all the concepts of the tool and getting up and creating great schedules very quickly. And users will also enjoy having everything in one tool and that runs in a browser. So they both have equipment, orders, operations, BOM, and inventory and all. And I think they have all the different data all available, so they can do more faster and with less clicks. And finally, then we are also putting a lot of effort from the product side into the UI of the tool to allow a user to build their own tool within the tool. So all tables, all windows are fully and easily configurable. You add the stuff you need, you do the filtering you need. So it means that users can quickly and individually also sort and filter in ways that they are very familiar with coming from the what I said before, the semi manual Excel world. So they can do all this, build the tool within the tool, while and do all that configuration, but still staying within the safe borders of the scheduler tool itself.
Yeah, you mentioned a lot there. One of the things that I heard is the importance of this combination of standardization and flexibility, right? You want to be able to roll things out quickly, so kind of have one template or one configuration that you can push out, but then at individual sites, it's really important to be able to configure those as needed, for different exceptions. So yeah, I think that there's a lot all of these tools have to offer to help with the challenges that IT leaders are facing with enterprise scale. And that brings us to our last question. So move this slide. For this question, we're looking for an example of how an IT leader might get started seeing value quickly from your product. So Joe, back to you. Can you talk about an example of how an IT leader might be able to use Proficy MES to quickly start seeing value?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the easiest things you can do is start setting up efficiency, OEE. So that's pretty straightforward. If you have tags on your equipment already that tell you, say, for example, when the machine is down, we can easily pick up those tags and very quickly get you downtime signals. In fact, if you have those tags back in history, we can actually generate downtime signals way back in history. 2 years if you want to, as long as that signal existed and it was providing the right information. So it's very easy to set up, very easy to get going, very easy to get value from it, and get some serious time to value and some serious value output from it.
Awesome. Okay, Jimmy, can you talk a bit about how iFix or Simplicity or just Proficy, HMI, SCADA in general can help? What's an example of how an IT leader could use those to get to value very quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple key things there. I talked a bit about centralization earlier. One of the things that we do also have in our portfolio is something called Proficy Operations Hub. And really, when you start thinking about, again, when enterprise, where it could be that you've got multiple systems in a single plant or multiple plants, you really want to start looking at how can I provide consistency for the operators across this. So in other words, if you've got systems that are, like I mentioned earlier, maybe we're deployed at different times or different vendors. One of the challenges is even like I mentioned, having that consistency for operations. So one of the ways we can really help there is, by providing that single layer, that single point of entry for visualization. So as an example, if you do have different sites and you do have different systems, you could actually create a unified HMI across those systems. Leveraging a tool like Operations Hub, which can provide both operational displays like traditional HMI displays, but also bring in data from different OTs or IT systems as well. So it can provide that common interface or common point of entry, a common interface, and be able to actually visualize things like, or bring in things like CMMS data from the other systems we're talking about, like the MES and things like that. Basically, with something like Operations Hub, it has the ability to visualize both IT data and OT data. So bringing in things like data from CMMS systems, like maintenance data, manufacturing data from RMES systems, and really provide that more than just your HMI contacts for operations. So we're typically used to just looking at standard HMI displays, but what if you could also get what was the last maintenance date on that piece of equipment and that type of thing all in a single display. So it's really bringing in not just data from those multiple HMI SCADA systems for visualization, but also marrying it with other information as well, coming from historical data, analysis, trends, etc. So as an example, we can have a view of a piece of equipment, look at that last data, have a historical trends, so you know what was happening before. But then the other kind of thing when you start bringing this system together is you can also start looking at comparative views across plants or across lines and things like that. Why is one line running more efficiently? What's the data behind it? All that type of thing can really help with managing the system or managing and visualizing the system at a enterprise level. And then one of the capabilities that we also talked about already was the modeling, but really combine that with the ability to template out displays. Now you've got a way of not just looking at the data across sites and stuff, but actually having a way to template or help provide that consistency. And a lot of this can really help for things like remote operations, as an example, if you are trying to manage these systems from a remote site versus being at the site itself. So again, it depends on system goals and those type of things, but we do have the flexibility and the tools to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that ability to look across different sites, different lines, and be able to see, where things are happening very well and how can we understand what's happening there and apply it across other areas. Or, conversely, where, are things not going well and what's going wrong and how can we fix it? So yeah, that's super key in enterprise scale for sure. And I love how much you talked about data. You are a great hype man for Brian. So I'll turn it over to Brian to talk about Proficy Historian and an example of how an IT leader could, use Proficy Historian to get to value very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the easiest use case for Historian and data, right? Once it's set up, you're collecting everything you need. The fastest way to get there is really with our cloud version of Historian, like I talked about previously on AWS. Folks on the call today could start now from AWS Marketplace, deploy the Historian with a few clicks of your mouse, and then within an hour, your Historian is up and running. Your collectors are added. You're bringing in data. You can start to see trends on your data from our analysis tools. And one of the cool functions within our AWS Historian is the ability to export that data into what's called a Parquet file format. And you can think of Parquet, if you're not familiar with it, as sort of a CSV on steroids. It's a very flat format. It saves a lot of space in storage, but it's a widely accepted data analysis format. So any tool that's doing data analysis can bring data into Parquet. If you're using Snowflake, for example, they have a direct import of Parquet files. And what that does is not only does it lower your storage costs for your Historian data, but it gives you that immediate access to analytics. So by the end of the afternoon today, you'd be able to have an analytics program up and running in tools that you're already using, leveraging all the data that you're able to bring in from Historian. And the beauty of cloud, you can do this on-prem as well, but cloud makes it a little bit quicker, is you could deploy your collectors across the globe. If you have a site in the US and a site in Europe and a site in Australia, for example, you can run them all into the same Proficy Historian on AWS, collect all the data at an enterprise level for every plant that you have, and start to analyze it. And this is a few hours exercise, really. And it saves you the time of procuring the equipment, getting it all set up, making sure that you're doing all of the IT rigmarole that normally happens when you're procuring software and setting up servers and things. And really, so by the end of the afternoon today, you could have new results, be getting the data that you need. and then running calculations like Joe talked about, like OEE, or like things that Jimmy talked about. And then if you layer on top of that Proficy Data Hub when it becomes available mid next year, you're able to then bring all of your systems together and start to see value from that. And that also is a very quick exercise with the data modeling that we have using an ISA 95 model, right? Very fast to start up, fast to get results. And it gives you that perhaps a viewpoint that you've never seen into your data before. And you're able to collect as much of it as you need because of the way Proficy Historian is able to store it very fast and very efficiently. And you can go back many, many years. And we have customers on Historian that are storing data for close to as long as I've been alive, like 20 or more years of data. And then you're able to analyze it and get a full view of your operation, perhaps from the beginning of when you started to today. And going into the future, that capability is only going to get better. So you're able to drive more insights as we add AI into the product and start to look at pattern matching or different things or new and novel ways to analyze solutions and start to give you outputs where you'll be able to work towards closed loop control, for example, and start to get the best results out of your equipment and machinery and factory line. So it's really it's a super powerful tool. And yeah, the easiest way would be to start on cloud, right? It gives you the best throughput, the best cost and optimization, and you can start now.
Well, getting up and running in an hour or a couple of hours is going to be a tough example to beat, but that's great.
Sure.
So we'll wrap this last question up with Jens to talk about how an example of how somebody could use Proficy Scheduler to start getting to value very quickly.
Yeah, won't be as fast as Brian, but so actually, I think my take here is that if I were to deploy scheduler at many different sites, I would really approach it with getting a group of knowledgeable domain experts in scheduling that can talk to the folks and knows how to turn business requirements from the planning people into solutions in the scheduler tool. That would be my first suggestion. Then I think assess the plans you have, group them into different types of technologies, because I think, as an example, some plans, maybe the biggest scheduling challenge is to if you have multiple BOM levels, maybe the challenge is to synchronize multi-BOM level scheduling. But for another plan, it's maybe the packaging lines, scheduling and the sequencing on those that is important. So I think assess what you have and then group it into different types, and then start to map out for those different types how you are going to approach it. Then pick the right pilot plans that brings where this solution can bring real value, and time to value is short, because that's the best way to really get the focus from the plant and also keep them attentive on the project. Always, all through all this, have a templating mindset, develop strategies, patterns, documentations that are flexible enough for that multi-plant applicability. So templating all the way through. But also, in my experience, it's you never make one tool that fits all the different plants. So be ready to say, okay, we need this this feature for that type of plants. That's okay in my opinion there. And finally, also, I think it's important to establish a way to share lessons learned between the different plants. So one lesson learned in one plant can be used to create value for another plant. So create user groups or within the enterprise or some form of shared documentation. So again, I'm talking about a lot about the how you roll out and change management, but I think that's also important when you think how to roll out all these tools here.
Yeah, I really like that approach. I like the idea of getting together, people who are really knowledgeable about the software. And I think there's a lot that you can do with Scheduler, but you kind of need to know what's possible with it. So I think that's really key. And, segmenting out the different plants and kind of determining, what's the goal at each one. And it could be, different areas to different ways that they could be realizing value. So yeah, I love that answer. Thanks for all of the answers. That was a lot of great insight. And before we get into the Q&A, I'd like to just recap what we've heard. So it's clear that scaling operations successfully takes more than just adding new tools. It requires a thoughtful, coordinated approach across your entire tech stack. From standardizing MES deployments to consolidating historian data, unifying visualization with HMI SCADA, and enabling more agile production planning with scheduling software. IT leaders have a critical role to play in making enterprise-wide transformation achievable, repeatable, and sustainable. But what really stood out to me, especially in this last section, is that you don't have to overhaul everything at once. Many of our customers start with a single site, a specific integration point, or a pilot initiative. And they quickly start seeing value both operationally and in terms of IT efficiency. So if you're looking for a smarter path to scale, the Proficy portfolio can help you get there while reducing complexity and increasing standardization across your organization.